Welcome to the space for transformational leaders to unleash their magic, see better client results, work lighter, and live source. Hello and welcome. This is Darla LeDoux. I am the founder of Sourced and author of Shift the Field. I am here with Tara Galeano. Tara is a certified sourced leader. She is a sexual empowerment coach, and I'm going to read a little bit of her formal bio in just a minute. But welcome, Tara.
Yay. Thanks so much for having me here, Darla. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I always love your captivating background.
Thank you. Ooh, it's a vision board.
I love it. So guys, just a little bit about Tara. We are going to be talking today about what it is to lead Sourced, and specifically about magic and how Tara creates magic in her work as a sexual empowerment coach. But first, let me just share a little bit about Tara. You've got to get her book, so we'll start there. Tara is the author of Rediscovering My Body. Rediscovering My Body. You can find this on Amazon, on her website. She's even got an audio version on YouTube, right?
I do, yeah.
It's got amazing exercises that will be really eye-opening for you as you think about your relationship to your body and your sexuality. Tara's worked with women for over 2 decades to get their sexy back. She knows there is pleasure in the body beyond our wildest dreams and that every woman can access it. She rediscovered her own body after leaving her 25-year marriage, realizing that she had given so much of herself away. I know people can relate to this. Mm-hmm. She knew that she needed to come back to the body's inherent wisdom. Through connecting with her body, Tara was able to understand what was right and pleasurable for her, how to best proceed from this wisdom, and most importantly, how to teach these lessons to other women who are clamoring for the same truths so that they too could transform their lives and reclaim their sensuality. Now, Tara has embodied this path and is moving forward to share this with women everywhere. Tara, so gosh, I would say in my knowing of you and your background, this work really chose you.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, even before we dive into what it is to lead Sourced, like how did you get into the work of sexuality?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it really was about the work choosing me. And I think about the human design work that you and I have engaged in and how I am responding to what it is that comes to me. And that really was what happened, is that I was trained as a clinician, got certified as, or I got licensed as a professional counselor. And from the moment I hung out my shingle, people were wanting to speak with me about sex, sexuality, relationships, sexual preferences, and all of these things that I'd actually not studied in my graduate program because we had 0 classes on human sexuality. And so I needed to get up to speed.
Wait, let's just say that for a minute. So in your advanced degree as a therapist, 0 classes on sexuality.
0. Yeah. Can you believe that? I mean, that was, like I said, a couple of decades ago. So that was in the late 90s, graduated in 2000. But there was nothing. And so I could pull from my own personal experiences, but I thought I need to get educated so I can really help people in the way that they want to be helped. Because I felt honored that they were opening up to me and being vulnerable, talking about really personal and intimate experiences that they didn't really have much, fluency with, is really what it came down to.
Isn't that interesting? We talk a lot in the Sourced program about what we put in the space, right? The energy we put in the space invites in the match to that. And so there was something, obviously, your soul was putting in the space that you're attracting these people from the start.
Yes. And I'm glad that I didn't feel like I needed to shut that down because I wasn't an expert. I wasn't trained in it. I thought, okay, I'm just going to be open to the invitation and then get up to speed and begin to meet them. And in some ways I was up to speed because they were feeling comfortable speaking with me. And I just needed to know more about how to help.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so then you went back and you got more education. and
Always.
got your certification as a sex therapist and a variety of things, really.
Yes.
Right.
Hmm.
And then could you share a little bit, because you started then working in groups with cancer patients. And I feel
Yes.
like this is a pivotal part of your work that influenced you to write your book and kind of the work you're doing now.
Yeah, yeah. And so always for me, a passion has been working with groups because I feel like transformation happens in the larger numbers. It's I mean, it's important that we do our own personal work. And I could see the limitation of doing one-on-one therapy, where it is when we're in a group, we're showing up as multidimensional, multifaceted beings, and then we need to navigate multiple relationships. And so I could see so much more transformation in those experiences. So working in a group setting was really pivotal for me. And then working with women who'd had a cancer diagnosis was really a profound change in my work, because these women were they faced their own mortality. Like they
Yeah.
knew that what it was to face death and to choose life and to choose more pleasure and to really deepen into that and be committed to the process. And so for me, that commitment and that desire to want something more and to have very little basis for it, because what I did also see with cancer survivors was their vulnerability and this discomfort of being in the body, because the sense of feeling that their body had betrayed them because they'd had cancer. They may have felt like they did everything right, and then they had cancer. And so for me, that was a tremendous paradox to be living within. And then to be able to work with them, I felt like it was juicy. It was a great place to learn more about groups, paradoxes, transitions, and transformation.
There's so much in that, first of all, that they had a different relationship to their body because of the cancer that
Yeah.
really heightened, I'm sure, your awareness of some nuances of how we relate to our body when we're not sick, right? Where how we don't relate to it, how we ignore
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
And then, this aspect of group, obviously I'm passionate about that, having, taught about retreats for a long time. Um, it's one thing to show up in relationship with your therapist,
Yeah.
and then you have the preconceived idea of who you are, and it's going to show up just in this certain way. And then you
Yes.
add other people where you're actually able to see, you as a therapist can actually see, yeah, well, they say this, but they're showing up like this, right?
Yes.
So how has that helped for you to be able to, because you do groups now in this new work, how has that helped?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we are um, so relational, particularly as women. Like we are relational beings. And so to have that reflection is powerful. And I think it can be painful. And I think it takes a lot of awareness to take that in and not necessarily take it on, but to begin to understand, oh, okay, this is how my energy mixes with this other person's energy. And this is what we create with that. And we can recognize
Yes.
the messiness or the discord with that. Whereas other people, we may have more resonance and we can feel how we can flow with them a little bit differently. And it's nice to have both, because then we can understand different aspects of ourselves. And so when we see it as a learning place or like a learning opportunity,
A
and we don't,
playground.
yeah, a playground to be messy and to be curious, then it can be so much more fun. And when we live into a place of shame or perfection, of I need to get this right, then I'd say the constriction comes in. And that's where I was feeling the one-on-one limitations. I see the benefit of working with one, because it gives us safety, it gives us security, it gives us a sense of, I would say, a secure attachment that many of us didn't have growing up with a primary caregiver. And so there's a real value to that. And when we're ready for, I would say, the next level, or we're ready for more dimensionality in our process, we can add more people. And when it's a safe container, then there can be such profound healing. And I would say it's exponentially more powerful in those settings. And that's what I like to see. That's what I like to host. That's what I like to be a part of.
So I have two questions that are feeling exciting. One is, I happen to know that you've spent some time in intentional communities.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And so I think this is also really fascinating. I remember when I learned that and I thought, oh, that is a super interesting aspect that you bring, that
Yeah.
you traveled around and spent time in groups and you saw things that were done well and things that weren't done well. And, I often feel like those of us who are leading transformational work, I can't tell you how many people I know want to have a retreat center, want to bring, have a space for people to come live and transform. And
Yes.
so, yeah, if anything pops to mind about that experience and kind of where you are now from this vantage point, what you've learned about community, that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have a deep and profound love for community, is what I recognize. I have a lot of Aquarius in my chart, kind of the humanitarian. So, just bringing in the astrology. And when I was younger, my former husband, and I could feel the limitations of a nuclear family, and we wanted so much more. So, we let go of that idea that we need to create a nuclear family. And we got into a little school bus that we bought. We converted it into a home. We traveled across the country. We wound up in Hawaii. We lived in intentional community. And then we traveled back across the country, also looking at intentional communities. And we wound up at a Waldorf school, which is not necessarily an intentional community of living, but it is an intentional community of education of the children. And so really feeling the respect and the honor of children as young beings as we bring forth into the world as primary for the world that I'm wanting to create, the world that I want my children and grandchildren to live in. And so really feeling into that and making that commitment. And then what I've seen is that it's difficult, right? It's difficult because we have edges, and that we can flow better with some people, like I was saying earlier. And then oftentimes
Right.
we have the discord. And then with the discord, I find that there's contraction. And then there needs to be a process of bringing back to the community what it is that we know. And so for me, I never give up on that. I'm always coming back to the community to understand how we can proceed forward. And what I know now, and I love all of these people wanting retreat centers and wanting to house people, because for me, what I know now, it is the connection to the land that is so powerful, is that the land where I live absolutely supports me and I feel it. Whereas I've felt disconnected in more urban settings and have felt like there's too much concrete. I'm not feeling the earth beneath my feet. And then I'm not in my coherent field. And when I'm not in my coherent field, I'm not serving people in my best, and I'm not serving myself in my best. And so finding the land where I can be was really critical. And I loved Hawaii. I loved the big island of Hawaii, where that felt nurturing to me. And now I live in Northern California, and that feels nurturing to me. I lived in Colorado for many years, and it was good enough, but the dryness, the altitude, it wasn't as nurturing and nourishing and supportive. And now I know that that's a really critical feature of the land supports us, like our connection to the Mother Earth supports us, so we can show up as these vibrant beings, so then we can help support our brothers and sisters. And that's how I see community will grow.
Beautiful. Which
Yeah.
makes me think about the sacred sites
Yes.
and your vision. So I'd love to just spend, a minute or two on that, and then we'll talk about sex and our bodies.
Oh, I love that. Sex too. Yes. So, so the downloads that I'm getting these days are really around sacred geometry and sacred sites, and how the earth is filled with sacred geometry. I mean, it's in nature, we can see it, and it's also on the map, like it's in geography. And there are vortexes and there are sacred sites that hold more energy that we as humans over eons have been attracted to and have held ceremony and have held ritual. And in those places, then there's a power there that is inherent in the earth, but also has been tended to and cultivated. And because of our level of consciousness these days, it's emerging again. But for a long time, it was dormant and hidden because we couldn't handle it. And so there were Aboriginal cultures, indigenous people who were holding and tending those fires of the sacred, who were, thank goodness, the wisdom keepers. And now it's becoming more and more available to us if we have the eyes to see, right? And we can feel into that energy and honor the sacred sites, because in that it is vast wisdom. And it's really coming into this womb space. And I have so many wombs and vulvas on my background. The sex. And in that space is the darkness and the stillness. So that's what I'm being called forth in terms of my work, is to take people to these sacred sites, to experience more ceremony. So I love this connection to land and the retreat centers. And for me, it's also about so the both and this nomadic lifestyle of connecting with all of the sacred sites, or as many as possible, to feel into them, to bring people there so they have a better remembrance of what is true for them and what they're here to bring forth. Because my experience, having grown up in New York City, was like a lot of static, a lot of like, oh, this is not my remembrance here. It's a lot of human ego, and it's not where I want to live at this time.
Well, I know for me, as I look at, I've moved quite a bit, and each location has brought forth something different for me in my evolution. And then having hosted, almost 100 retreats now in different cities and, lands, and in the city, out of the city, all various things, really seeing how the location influences the outcome. And in many ways we can create transformation anywhere, but the flavor of it is different depending on the land. So I love that.
Yes, I love that as well. Yeah, because time and space are constructs, and they're also very relative. So the location makes it relative and makes it a different flavor. And I love that. So we have all these different flavors all over the world.
Yeah. All right. So people should keep an eye out for where Tara's going next.
I love it.
So let's talk about sex, baby.
All right. Baby.
I wanted to start with the idea of being a sourced leader. And so if people aren't familiar with what this means, there is the knowing that we have, that we are guided by source, right? That our intuition or our inner knowing comes through us, and we just know how we're meant to play on this planet because we're cultivating our connection to source. And we also deeply, deeply trust that our clients have that connection as well, right? So rather than coming in as, I know the answer for you, we're playing in this playground with source to see what are we co-creating. And so I'm curious, as you think about, you had the therapy hat and then the coaching hat, and not that they're hats, right? Because we're integrated, but the therapy, there are certain ways of doing things, right? Or at least paperwork. That then when you shift out of the therapeutic approach goes away. When we add this layer of what it is to be led and guided by source, how has that influenced you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm feeling into that. I think one of the biggest things that I'm noticing is my ability to show up for my clients. So as a therapist, and my training was in a psychodynamic background, so I am a blank slate, right? And then the projections are thrust upon me and I navigate them, right? Using my shields and not taking it on and like, woo. And now as a source
that
leader,
sounds very warlike.
I mean, it felt like it's like, okay, I'm just taking on people's projections and understanding them, and very cerebral. But now I'm much more embodied, and also understanding that I get to show up as well, is that who I am is part of the magic, and that being a blank slate was a part of my developmental process and part of my training as a clinician. And it doesn't end there, and that there's a lot more potency when I show up as all of Tara, and meet my clients so I can see all of who they are and who they're becoming.
I love that. I love that, especially when we think about that conversation we had about community and the different people and the different energies bring out different things in us.
Yes.
And so if you're trying to be a blank slate, that's not life. Right. So you lose that richness of what it is to interact.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
It was. I mean, and it was very Freudian, and so psychoanalytic. And so it came from this, I would say, background that was not embodied. It was much more cerebral, and defensive in posture. And so that's kind of like where that shielding came from. Whereas this experience for me is more feminine and receptive. Like I can embrace the feminine qualities of passivity, receptivity, surrender, and acknowledging that feels very different from the posturing of the psychoanalytic background that I was trained in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you use the word embodied, which is so important. And, we, in the certification program, we look at like this dance or this balance between the client having their own answer, right? Which coaching is generally coming from that place. The client has the answer, you ask the questions. And as a coach, you might ask, 12 questions to get to something, and then they still might dance around it, right? And I know myself as a client, I know I've been slippery before where it's like, oh, I don't want to go there. Let me say this instead.
Yep.
Or no, I don't think it's that. It must be this. Look over here. And so the magic, when you're embodied as the coach, you have a knowing. And so there's the knowing that you might have or sense or feel. And then there's your client who's also got their connection to source. And it's a little bit of a dance. So how has that been helpful as you've navigated this world of sexual empowerment? How has it been helpful to be able to say, well, I'm getting this. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would say, well, this is what I'm sensing. What are you sensing? Where there's more of a togetherness.
Yeah. I think I'm just feeling into it. Like, yeah, I think one of the pieces is that as a sex therapist, it's always been about the embodiment process, because the sex is about being in the body. And so the opportunity to switch into coaching is about being in the body even more and sharing my own embodied experiences. So not necessarily focusing solely or exclusively on the client's bodily experience, but also bringing into the field my awareness of, again, what you just said so eloquently, is this is what I'm sensing, this is what I'm feeling, and naming it in the body, and then also seeing it in the body of the other, because now I've got so many decades of experience, I'm seeing it more clearly as it shows up in the body of my client and saying, this is what I'm seeing, what are you experiencing? So when I'm able to name it, they're able to feel into it a little bit, and they can say that's true or that's not true, or this is what it feels like for me. And that's really important, because now I'm getting the cues that I can see, oh, okay, this is the contraction, or this may be the difficult experience that they're not verbalizing, or this is what I'm sensing in their body, even though the story's going here.
Yes. So as you have been incorporating, this embodiment, and the different magics that, we teach 6 types of magics. This is just a framework to help people access their inner knowing. It's not like the only way to think about it. How has that been helpful?
I mean, I think in so many ways, I feel like it's this opportunity to, what I think you do so well, and through your books and through your teachings, is provide a structure for transformation. And so for me, it offers a language and a pathway forward where I can see, particularly in the past for me, being a little bit amorphous, being a little bit more fluid, and then holding the structure provides, I would say, a more concrete pathway and even language. Like when I think about language, it's really this opportunity to conceptualize ideas and put into form that are words, a pathway forward, and an opportunity to communicate more clearly. So that's how I know the different magics have come alive in my work, because there's a name for this felt sense that people have experienced and didn't know how to verbalize. And when we can verbalize these things, we can exchange ideas more clearly. So that has been the beautiful piece about it. I feel like that's been good.
Amazing. So let's ground this a little bit. So
Mhm.
let's say someone has a knowing that shows up as vibrational
Mhm.
and they're in the bedroom.
Mhm.
How would
Mhm.
that help them know what they want, be able to speak
Mhm.
up, right? Because these are the things you help people with, just to underline, right? Is
Yes.
that helping women to know what they actually want, what feels good, what doesn't,
Yeah.
to map their bodies and see what they love about their bodies, what they judge about their bodies. And I would imagine sometimes people don't know.
I'd say by and large, a lot of my clients don't know. And I think part of that is our training in educational institutions is to think, right? Therefore, I am. It's
Right.
this Cartesian model of cerebral knowledge, which is great and valid, and also limiting when it's not in the body, because there's so much more information in the body. So when we template from another person that bodily or felt sense, we get things in a very different way. And
Mm.
when we don't know how to,
Can you say that again? Because I
Mhm,
think that language is really helpful. When we template what we get,
mhm,
can you
mhm.
describe that a little bit?
Yes, yeah. So I work with lots of different teachers and coaches in addition to the work that I do with clients. And one of the
Yeah.
things that I've learned so powerfully is the templating. So I desire role models and mentors and coaches,
Mm.
like my work with you, that embody something that I want to explore more of.
Mm.
So when people come to work with me, it's around sex and sexuality.
Yes.
And how I show up in my body is a template for them to
Mm.
feel into. Not that they're going to be touching my body, but they can energetically feel
Yeah.
into my body and feel,
Right.
okay, this is what a grounded sexual woman may feel like.
Right.
And so it may feel different than somebody who's kind of in the airways or using their sex as a manipulation or power or something different. So this is a different sense of sexuality, and we need that. As what I find in my work is that oftentimes we're referencing things like pornography is a really big influencer in the field of sex and sexuality, whether we watch it or whether
Right.
we don't. People know about it and they're familiar with it. And you can see how we embody almost a caricature of some of those
Mm.
elements. Like maybe when we're coming to orgasm, we're like, and it's like, it's not real. It's really not us. It's this performance of something that we imagine
Mm.
is supposed to be. And when we can template into what's
Mm.
true for us, we have a little bit more information. But a lot of us can't go there first because we need to understand how it is another person first, because we're so externally focused. We reference there, which makes sense. It's like we have caregivers that raise us. So we learn so much from them: what
Yeah.
is true, what is not true, what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. We get that from the body. So that's how we template information from our primary caregivers. And so when we work with coaches, we get that template of whatever information we're looking. And so for me, it's in the field of sex and
Yeah.
sexuality. And that's really powerful. So it goes beyond the work.
Yes. I love that. I talk a lot about that, the container, right? The structure
Yeah.
is the container. And I think of it as within the container, you're stepping into a certain energy field that you'll then entrain to. So when you're
Yeah.
out in life, right, you have this energetic that you have access to, right? Which is, in my work, if someone's working with me privately, it would be whatever my energetic is. And so what I'm hearing in that is just another way to describe that idea. And it also makes me think, Tara, about human design.
Yeah.
And there's certain, and for people who don't know about human design, Google it. You could go down a whole entire rabbit hole about this. But we have certain centers and channels that are open or fixed, and that makes up our energetic template, really.
Yeah.
And so, someone is going to be able to access things with you that they might not be able to access with me, and vice versa, because we literally are templated differently.
Yes.
And then as we transform, we continue to shift that. That's so fascinating, especially thinking about working in groups.
Yes.
And like bringing in the various templates to explore with. This is what's really happening, right? We think it's the exercises that we're writing in our notebook, but it really is the experiencing different people showing up in some kind of, designed experience that really shows us more of who we are. And so what you were saying about, the therapeutic model of I'm a blank slate,
Yes.
right? We get none of that. It's like we're missing the richness there.
Yes. And we're missing the richness. We're really missing the essence of what it is that we truly, I believe, desire. It's like my desire when I'm exploring in the field of sex and sexuality is intimacy. And I want to know myself, and I really want to know my partner. I want to know the experience. I want to feel deeply into that. And that for me is the profound wisdom. And when someone's not showing up because they're filled with shame, or they feel wounded, or they don't feel good enough, or whatever reason,
they think they should look a certain way from the porn performance.
Exactly. And whatever way we cloak our experience, it's we're masking and obscuring the essence of who we are. And my sense is we really want more of the essence, because the essence enables us to feel more, and we all want to feel so much more.
Yes, we want to, and then it's also challenging, right?
It is. It's scary.
Because we're not taught. We're taught to stay here, right? This is safe. This is scary. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, well, Tara, I am so glad you're doing this work in the world. It's amazing. I'm so delighted to get to share you with our audience, and really to get to do this work on the planet with you.
Darla, such an honor.
Yes. So let's talk about, you have a training that people can access so they can get a little bit more, because we just touched the surface, and I'm sure people get a sense of your philosophy. And I guess I would pause and ask people to just feel into what it would be like to actually be yourself when it comes to sex, right? To be present and to know what you want.
Yep.
Rather than whatever you think your partner wants, or whatever you think it should look like from whatever images we've taken in, right? What would it be like to really be in that level of presence? And if that interests you, then go find Tara's masterclass. And she's got different things going on at different times of the year, depending on the sacred site that's in her eyes. But tell people how they can access that.
Wonderful. So the best way to reach me and find out more about my work is through my website, Rediscovering My Body. And the masterclass, Rediscovering My Body, is a 5-week process, and it dives deeper into desire and sexuality and the inherent wisdom of the body, which I think is a profound and important primary place to start.
Yeah. Everybody needs this foundation, right?
I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, we want to go to the master class. I remember you saying this, or I won't use the word master class. We want to go to graduate school.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But we really need the foundations, right?
We do. Yes. We want to go to ecstasy. We want to go to orgasm. And it's really about, okay, what's true in my body in this moment right now?
Yeah.
Because we'll get there. We'll get to the ecstasy, but we really need to deal with what is in this moment.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll put the links to Rediscovering My Body and the various ways to find Tara online in the link below this video. What would you like to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that there's so much more fun. There's so much more creativity. There's so much more imagination that we can employ as we're exploring our bodies. It's really not about perfection. It's not really about getting it right. It's really about contacting and investing in the joy within ourselves. When we feel that within ourselves, and it's like it just bubbles over. And so that's what I feel like is the opportunity with sex and sexuality, to really tap into that joy of just being.
Yes. I would call that the sourced energy in the moment.
I love it. And so it is.
Like that's all that there is. That is all that there is.
Effortlessly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Tara.
My pleasure.
Have an amazing day. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon.